All right, folks, looks like we're live. Finally, I've got the Facebook Live to work. So this is going to represent a bit of a change because I used to go live on YouTube, and now because of course we have this group, I prefer the live videos to be on here. So we're still going to do it on YouTube, but YouTube is not going to be live anymore. I'm going to just upload this because right now as I'm live streaming, it's also recording. So I'm going to put that up on YouTube for those of you. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're not in our Facebook group yet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link in the comment section. And you can request to join our exclusive Facebook group because all the live streams get done there first. And of course, during the live stream, you can ask me questions, you can interact with me as well. All right, so let's get started. Today we have a nice little interesting new question. Let me go back to my document right here. People are influenced by their environment rather than their genetics. Do you agree or disagree? Now, with agree disagree questions, it's your choice. Pick whatever you feel is most appropriate, right? So you don't really have to be bothered about what is considered okay or not okay to have. A lot of people think that, this opinion is a nice opinion to have, right? Because a lot of people share that opinion maybe, but then maybe you don't actually think that way. So don't really bother with all of that. Just write what you feel is, true to yourself, all right? Okay, so first things first, I'm gonna see if I can just get my main ideas done. That's what I prefer. You can, of course, start with your introductions as well. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a choice, a preference. This is like easier for me because I can just, let me just zoom in a little bit. The text is so small. All right, and if you're watching the live stream in our Facebook group, you can just leave a comment down here at any point if you need me to explain something, or if something isn't clear, because sometimes you might feel like, what does this idea even mean? And so if you just drop a comment and let me know down below, I can explain things for you. All right, so let me first just choose, do I agree or do I disagree? So I personally think that, obviously genetics plays a huge role, but ultimately, I think environment wins out. You can have, two people of the same parentage, of the same breeding, and you put them in different environments and they're going to end up different. I think there was even like a study conducted way back when ethics was not a thing. So yeah, right. But even if you don't know about studies and research and whatever, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to quote those studies in here because even I don't remember the years and the psychologists behind it and blah blah blah. So don't worry about, oh, but I don't have proof for this thing. That's okay. You don't need proof. You don't need to quote any research, studies, whatever. All right, so I'm gonna go with yes. I do think the environment plays a much bigger role, and that people are not essentially, people are, well, there's this idea in psychology that people are blank slates that you can kind of imprint on them. I don't want to go too deep into psychology because I want to make these ideas relatable for most of you. So maybe I'll choose something a little bit more simple, because the main idea really should be kept as simple as you can. You don't want it to be some complicated gobbledygook, okay? So yeah, keep your main idea easy to understand, easy to read. Because see, if it's easy for you to write about, it's also easy for your reader. That's what a lot of people kind of forget. Okay, so I agree. Let me just mark that. I'm going to say maybe although parental background or parentage. So although parentage has some influence. So I have this different keyboard that I'm using. I'm thinking I should just dump that one and just use, because I'm switching between keyboards and it's really weird. Anyway, although parentage has some influence on people, it is ultimately, and I'm just gonna pull out because I have this. Okay. Whoops. All right. So all the parents learn from one people. It is ultimately their upbringing that shapes them. Less than ideal can still be worked over or be dealt with. Whoops. Appropriately with the right well, I don't want to use the word upbringing again, right? So, and this is okay, this is a little bit interesting. Here what I'm doing is, okay, so this is what I don't really recommend my students to kind of, do this kind of thing, because again, to essentially concede that yes, one side does have some importance, but ultimately it's the other side that's more important. That kind of balancing thing is a very high risk proposition. And you really only, I mean, if you were at a band 9 or band 8 level, you wouldn't even be watching this video anyway. So that's only something you can do with the help of advanced grammar. And really, I mean, it's not something I recommend anyone to do, but again, this is just the style I find most comfortable. Again, the way I write my essays, it's supposed to be like an ideal, like a really high score, a band 9 type, right? You don't have to do every single thing that I'm doing, but my goal here is to give you some ideas and give you some ways of building your essay from scratch, yeah? Okay, so right, it's ultimately upbringing. So it's like, although, of course, parentage has some importance, you can't just say it's not at all. I mean, imagine you have two people who have Down syndrome and they, become parents. Of course, that's going to, impact their child. But then I'm also saying that even if you have less than ideal genetics, they can still be dealt with appropriately with the right, let's say, mixture of, or with the right, strategies, methods of, I mean, even as adults, your personality can change. There's just so much to say about that. So I'm a little bit like confused. What do I pick as my main idea? Should I go with like something really niche? Because again, I can do that. That's fine for me. But ultimately, when you're writing an essay, you want to stick to something simple, easy, non-complicated. Yeah. Okay. Appropriately with the right methods. Okay, maybe this is a little bit too similar to this one. I can say the impact, yeah, the impact of was less important. There's this interesting saying, the first 20 years of your life or the first half of your life is someone else's doing. But the next 20 years, the next half of your life, it's entirely in your hands. I find that very interesting. So the impact of genetics grows less important with age. Maybe when you're a child, a teenager, you're more likely to express, because you're still learning about the world and about yourself. But as you grow older, anyway, I think those, I can just explain that in my supporting ideas. As once environment takes over, or shapes them through life, the people you meet, the kind of work you do, the company you keep, the ideas that you imbibe, the spiritual values that you learn, etc., etc. I mean, you could be the child of 2 serial killers. It doesn't mean you're going to grow up to be a serial killer. It doesn't have to be that way. Of course, there are some indicators, but overall, it is very much possible. We're not slaves to our biology. That's a good point, so I'm going to write that down. People are not slaves to biology. For example, many children are born addicted if their parents were drug addicts, but you can still overcome that. We have all these, tools, and medical science has made so much of an advance, right? So, let's say even if we may be prone to certain things, of course, a baby, for example, is the most selfish creature on the planet. But do you hate babies? Of course not. I mean, that's what they do. They put themselves above. What else? Do they care that you're tired and they're gonna bother you when they're crying at 3 a.m.? No, a baby is innately selfish. But do you hate it? No, of course you don't hate it. So you have to really teach them. You have to teach them, hey, you have to share your toys, you have to share, your food, for example, maybe. All these things are not natural. Yeah, they have to be trained. If you never tell a child, there's this trope that single kids, like only children, they tend to be selfish. It's not true for everyone, of course, but the idea is that because you were the only child, you never had to share anything, your clothes, your toys, your space, your parents' love, etc., that you just put yourself first. And I mean, it may be true for some people. I would suppose maybe it's true for me, but it's not always the case. Your life teaches you. Your parents teach you, of course. Your teachers teach you. Your friends teach you, right? Life teaches you. Life changes you. You're not the same person at 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, 80 as you were, previously. So, and I think that point, anyway, I can make that in the next paragraph, right? Because, even developmentally, people are not the same at each life stage. Of course, for example, moving from child to teenagehood to an adult to midlife, old age. People and events change us for better or worse. Your parents may have been monks and saints, but maybe you grow up to be a murderer. What gives? I mean, maybe you've, just met the wrong people in life. Maybe you've had something happen to you. So that can always be done. I mean, there's always outliers. They have to be trained to really be human. To share, to be polite, be kind, be helpful. All these things are not innate. If you never train a child to not be selfish, if you never train him or her to be polite, respectful, they will never learn it. That's the job of a parent, right? Otherwise, if the environment, if parentage, that is your genetics, if that was the only important thing, why would anyone even bother really raising their kids, really being a parent, right? That doesn't make any sense otherwise. So, right. It's multiple shapes then. Okay. People and events changes for better or worse. People are not the same at each life stage. Many kids, in fact, grow up to be radically different to their parents. It's almost like if you grew up in a super conservative environment, you may end up being super liberal. And if you grew up in a super liberal environment, you may actually end up going the other way. Happens a lot. It's almost trope at this point. So yeah, I got some nice ideas, but I still need to get that last one in here. Let's see. We're selfish. People are not slaves to biology. They can overcome a lot. Upbringing and just life in general. You have to parenting is an important job. It almost never ends, really. Good breeding, or like heritage, will ruin their lives. So yeah, you may have great parents and they're very smart, intelligent, etc., but if they don't do their job of parenting, your genetics are useless. So that's that. I've got my ideas, I've got everything right here. Great, now I can start writing my introduction. All right, so with the introduction, now the introduction is just supposed to be 2 sentences. That's it. I mean, that's what I teach my students. You can, of course, there may be other methods that you follow. That's, of course, entirely up to you, but this is what I recommend. You should ensure that you're not writing a whole book for your introduction. It really isn't the most important thing. It's important enough, but 2-3 sentences, not really more than that. Yeah, and again, the method I teach my students is very specific. We don't teach them to write more than 2 sentences. So first up, I'm gonna just give some info here. Let's see. All of science, essentially. I think people have been fascinated. People have long been fascinated with, the interplay of nature and nurture, and which side is, more important in the development of a human being. This argument is essentially never ending. Fascinating with the interplay of human nature and nurture, and which okay, great. Oh, I think although parentage is actually you know what? I think I'm gonna take, but then does it look nice if I put it over here? Yeah, it looks nicer like this, I think. I personally think that way. Maybe I can create a new main idea sentence. And this is like really easy to do, if I wrote this down on paper. Now that would be a different thing. Maybe a little bit difficult to change if you're doing, a pen and paper exam. But if you're doing a computer-based exam, super simple. You can just copy, paste, change, and well, that's pretty simple right there. So, let me see. Okay, all 3 ideas of mine, they are, let's say, not slaves to biology. You can be trained, it can be corrected. You're essentially, I would say, half-cooked, but anyway, that's very casual language. So you don't want to write people are half-cooked when they're born. But you could say that, like in your speaking test, perfectly okay. Let's see. This is a nice sentence, but ultimately, Now, if you're a student and you're watching this, don't be confused by how I've used although here, even though it's not a discussion essay, I know. But like I said at the very beginning, I'm using this style because it's easy for me. I can manage it. It's really only an advanced grammar technique. So for my students, keep in mind that you're not going to use although in an opinion essay. You're still just going to save it for discussion and advantage essays only for those 2. Yeah, I can do it because I can play within the rules of grammar just fine, but I don't recommend this for most people. It's a high risk strategy. If something goes wrong, my entire essay can just go for a toss. So gotta be careful with that. Okay, let's see what else I have here. I gotta really think about this because here I'm thinking, so it's a nice sentence. Maybe I can change this one instead. Maybe I can come up with something new instead, just to like avoid confusing everyone. Okay. Bring that over here. Then, despite the fact that, oh well, despite is very similar to although, but it's okay. It's not the same thing. Despite the fact that one's biology cannot be denied or ignored. The value of the environment it's shaping cannot be ignored. Oops. Is difficult to overstate. Okay. All right. Now this is, if you really think about it, this sentence and this sentence, they really mean the same thing. They really do. So I'm gonna change this main idea. It's a nice sentence. Hate to see it go, but I have to change it. I cannot just be repeating myself. That's pointless. So they're not slaves, they're selfish. For example, they have to be trained. Innately humans are selfish and, greedy, etc. All these undesirable traits. You can't breed them out, you have to train them. Parenting is more important than breeding. Now, this is again, breeding is just the act of reproduction. To bring a child into the world, it has a greater value. Important in a person's development, holistic development. Parenting is more important in a person's development than their heritage. Okay, great. So I've got my main ideas and I'm just gonna bring this down here. I'm gonna write my first body paragraph. So main idea remains the same. We don't change it, just copy, put it over here. If you're taking the exam, you don't even have to copy, you just delete this and you start with, your sentence. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so I'm gonna need a transition. Now the transitions that I teach you, if you're a student and you're watching this, the transitions that you already use, that you've already been taught, continue to use those. Yeah, I might use different, because again, the point of these videos is just to show you, okay, what is an absolutely ideal essay like. So yeah, I mean, it's good to take ideas from here, but remember that I might not stick to the format I teach you. Of course, because the format I teach you is only, the goal there is only to get you up to a 7.5 maximum band 8 in writing, right? Because why would you need to spend hours and hours learning advanced, super advanced grammar? It's just a waste of time. So for that reason, my style might be a little bit different. Right. So, okay, so I need to arrange my content. Let me just see if, people are not slaves. Parenting is an important job. People are prone to certain behaviors. This is good, I think. Yeah. Something that is pertinent to note is that humans are not slaves to their biology, as even though a person may be born of, poor parents. I don't want to say poor in the material sense. Let's say less than ideal. Let's say, for example, drug addicts or people with a history of mental illness. We can manage mental illness these days. There are so many people who have mental illness and they do a great job in life. It doesn't have to be, maybe 100 years ago, you just throw them in an insane asylum because you didn't have the technology back then. But now, almost nothing is impossible. So something that's pertinent to note is that humans are not slaves to their biology, as even though a person may be born of less than ideal parents, for example, to drug addicts or people with mental illness, through the use of, modern technology and medicine, yeah, these, innate traits or these, hereditary issues can easily be overcome. I think with the passage of time, your heritage is less and less important, right? Because maybe 100 years ago, like I said, if, your parents had like schizophrenia, bipolar, whatever, and, you, of course, these traits are heritable. So you have a, even for example, diseases, like diabetes, heart attack, etc., even cancer, some types of cancer, there's a gene that, especially like for breast cancer, right? There's a gene that if, your grandparent or mom had it, you're more likely to have it as well. But, like I said, again, we have tests that can determine, hey, do you have the gene? Great, we'll do something about it, So yeah, maybe maybe that could be a nice main idea, and I could have some nice supporting ideas for that, but I don't want to write body paragraph number 3. So yeah, good. That was a good idea I could have used. But anyway, that's okay. Because when you start thinking of ideas, you have all these things that come to you. Okay, innately, okay. Yet another fact of life is that human beings are innately, I mean, yeah, greedy, selfish. It just, like I said, observe a baby's behavior, They have little regard for anybody else. I, me, myself put first. That's the core of a human being. All through life, you are taught to suppress those feelings. Don't put yourself first. Think about other people. Don't, annoy other people, right? Don't hit someone. A baby hits you. What are you going to do? Get mad at it? Of course not. So yeah, angry, resentful. We are all these things. All of us have it within us. Some of us just suppress it better. Human beings innately have undesirable qualities such as greed, selfishness, anger, and many more, which through parental and educational training are, trained out of us, are groomed out of us, right? In order to become better members of society. Observe a tribal society. I'm sure many of you read the news. Many years ago, there was this guy from America. He traveled to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and that area is protected. You can't just go there. Why? It's for your own safety. So these people, they're tribals, they have no contact. I don't know if tribals is the right word. I'm sorry if it's a wrong word. I do believe they're a civilization which, progressed a little bit differently, but they're very isolated, and you have to, you can't just let people go there because you can bring diseases, you can harm them, and so on. And of course, you have to protect these people and their way of life. So this guy came in, and what happened is he got he was killed, and really it was his own fault. I mean, so yeah, but why would you kill someone who just comes to your city, for example? Of course not. You wouldn't even care. But that's because you've been taught, right, that hey, we should be welcoming to other people, and etc., etc. Anyway, diatribe. Okay, last idea. I know this paragraph looks big already. Let's check the word count. Now, why isn't it? Okay, there it is. Oh, that's already 102. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so parenting, this, goes to show that parenting is a job whose importance cannot be overstated. In essence, good breeding. Oh, I should have a comma over there. In essence, good breeding. In fact, sorry, I was gonna write something else, but then I figured, okay, in fact, good breeding with bad parenting can easily lead a child to ruin, especially as he grows older. And of course, holds true as well. Also, so it can be stated and then quite easily be stated that one's heritage, one's breeding, one's background plays a small role one's, growth and overall life. Of course, one exception is money. If you're born with a silver spoon, well, you've pretty much got life set for you. That is really something you cannot change so easily. But anyway, that's like outside the scope of the essay, because we're talking about heritage as in genetics, right? Not like other external factors. Genetics, like I said, diseases, whatever, your heritage, like the size of your nose, for example. Okay, then we got this, then I need this one. Let's take that right here. Once you have your ideas, building your essay is pretty simple for the most part. And again, I've had tons and tons of practice, so of course, me telling you that, I understand it's a little bit funny, but it's the same thing for our students as well. I mean, the first time a student of mine writes an essay after I've taught them everything, it's of course not perfect. There's many things they're missing, many things they forget, and that's natural. That's how learning works. So you shouldn't have any pressure to like be perfect and remember 100% of everything. Not at all, not at all. Okay, so of course, like I said, the more you practice, I mean, by the time a student of mine writes maybe their 6th or 7th essay, they've really gotten everything down perfectly, almost perfectly. Okay, so people are not the same at each life stage. The impact of genetics grows less important with age as one's environment shapes them through life. Most importantly, I mean, this is obviously very clear. Okay. Just a second. I think I have. All right. What was I saying? I got sidetracked. Each life stage. As the person they were at 15 is not the same person they would be at 25 or 35. I mean, 5 years ago, I was a completely different person. Did you know that every 7 years, your entire body regenerates? All the cells of your body are completely renewed. Did you know that? So it's like a new body almost. Almost. Not quite the same, but almost. In fact, maybe that's a nice point to include here, but I don't want to write something huge, right? So that's yeah. Let's control ourselves maybe. This person they were at 15 is not the same person they'll be at 25 or 35. As life experiences, as they collect more life experiences and learn through them. For this, in a large part, due to these the people they meet and the events that unfold in their lives, better or for worse. Okay, people are not the same at each life stage as a person who at 15. Same person would be. Learn from them in a large part due to the people they meet and the events that unfold in their lives. People experience or people undergo major changes. For example, meeting one's future wife or husband or spouse. You can use the word spouse. Or let's say losing a job, right? Or maybe meeting a bad circle, or falling into drug use. Or for worse, can change drastically. And the last point is many people grow to be radically different. it is precisely due to these factors. And again, you live, I mean, your genetics are okay. They're one part of you. You cannot like delete them, of course. But I would say when you're younger, it's more important because that's all you really have. You don't have like, much life experience at 10 years old. But when you're like 30, 40, 50, 60, etc., that's it's just less and less important. Factors that, yeah, what was my point? Many kids grow up to be radically different. Exactly. That, although, comma, although, children, you know, may experience many, or may experience and, or let's say exhibit many of the same characteristics and behaviors, behaviors, and possibly even the interests of their parents. As they grow older, they almost inevitably end up finding their own identity, which in many cases, surprisingly enough, turns out to be one that may very well be completely opposite to that of their mother or father or their parents. Like I said, you know, the kind of environment you grew up in, you might end up being entirely opposite. Therefore, it is, yeah, it is appropriate to, okay, impact genetics results in, okay. One's background is only, let's say, one's, you know, heritage. Is no longer as important once they are older. And there we go. We've got our two body paragraphs. Finally, we're going to do our conclusion. So in conclusion, keep it simple, short, sweet. In conclusion, the value, or, you know, the impact one's parents have on, I mean, one's, well, genetics have on a person, the impact one's genetics have on a person, play a small, but, okay, play an important but small role in their holistic, let's say, being, especially as life shapes them and continues to shape them until they die. Okay, and maybe some kind of advice or a warning, or you know, some kind of suggestion, maybe. Yeah, if people were to assume that they could never exceed the limits of their biology, the human race would fail to achieve, as a whole, fail to achieve anything of note. I mean, if you think, oh, well, I mean, just think, for example, there are so many people that have lost an arm or a leg, and yet they can exercise, they can run. There's these Olympics for specially abled people, you know, so you can't say that, oh, I'm this and that, and, you know, it's just not in the cards for me. That's like a victim mindset. But anyway, that's another thing entirely. Maybe I should do public speaking. Okay, well, that's the whole thing. Let's check the word count. So this is 453. Yeah, I know that's like way too much, but like I said, these are just ideas for you to use. So let's look at the whole thing. So here is the question again. I'm gonna make that bold. Here's the introduction. You can pause the video. You can see the introduction is quite small, right? Then we've got body paragraph number 1. Got body paragraph number 2. And the last, the conclusion. There we go. That's it. And that's like 42 minutes with a lot of talking on the side. All right, then. This was super fun. Check back in next week where I'm going to do another essay just like this. You can come back on Saturday as well where I'm going to do a speaking test. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram as well. There's tons of useful tips and stuff. And like I said, we have our Facebook group. So I'm going to link that here so you can, join and get all the exclusives. And we have a batch starting up soon. So if you're interested, just drop me a message. All right, then. See you later. Bye.